being here. It's great to have individuals coming in for the workshops. I'm so thankful that you guys take the opportunity to be here and learn about the information that we're imparting upon you, and hopefully you can take some of the information with you and share it with other people or invite them to a workshop. Ultimately, this carpal tunnel syndrome workshop that I'm doing tonight is new to me in the sense that I've just revamped it a little bit. So I'll be referring to my notes more than I usually do. I have another workshop that I used to do many times, but this has got some updated information. So I want you to be aware of that. So if I refer back here, you'll know why I'm looking at these sheets of paper. But, you know, ultimately, what I'm about to share has changed a lot of people's understanding of carpal tunnel, okay? Some of the information I've shared before is in this workshop, and people sometimes have a misunderstanding of what carpal tunnel, where it comes from, what it is, what's going on, and ultimately, the question for you guys is, do you want improved health? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. She answered. Come on, everybody, join in. You know, you don't want to help. You just want to sit and you know. But you know, and in this environment right now, it is so important to learn everything you possibly can to take care of yourself. My hope is that with this information, you come back to us and ask us questions, and you come back and say, hey, you know, can I share this with someone, or do you have that information? And we'll print stuff out and give it to you. So that's a huge factor in saying everything in starting out here tonight. So the big thing here is, in saying that, we're going to be talking about carpal tunnel. Okay, carpal tunnel syndrome. We say fight back. Why? Because individuals don't understand what carpal tunnel is. They sometimes get confused about what it is. They think they have carpal tunnel, but they don't really have carpal tunnel. They get surgeries. We're going to talk about all of that stuff. If I'm in your way and you need to see something, just holler at me. It's good to see you. So ultimately, these are the things that we look at. Carpal tunnel. It's not on. There we go. Carpal tunnel is usually associated with occupational injuries. Okay. Who wants to hazard a guess what type of people have carpal tunnel? Clerical.
Massage therapist.
Massage therapist. Chiropractor.
Drivers.
Yeah. Waitress.
Waitress.
Anybody that does something repeatedly.
Yeah, repetitively. Yeah, exactly. You know, so the thing is, importantly enough, this was one of the stats that I looked at, that I just recently got. Occupational injuries are responsible for loss of productivity, time lost from work, on average 28 to 31 days. On average, okay? That's billions of dollars in cost. Okay, yeah, it is a wow. It is a big wow. I'm gonna move this over here because I want Tara to see.
She would tell you to get out of the way if you were with her.
You know, yeah, I know she would. Now it's in his way, but he can.
You don't care. I don't. I'll sit right in front of it.
That's all right. You can, when you massage me, you can hurt me later.
I know, I will.
So this is an important thing to talk about. So what are the causes? It could be nerve involvement locally. Okay, that's one of the causes, that the nerve that's coming through here, which is called the median nerve, is the one that is being impinged. There is also an associated or similar type of syndrome where you have a tunnel on the outside, and it's actually the ulnar nerve. Okay, but that's not called carpal tunnel. Okay, it's the hook of the hamate, and there's a small tunnel formed there, and it comes on the outside of your hand. Okay, so sometimes people will say, oh, I have carpal tunnel, but it's actually on the outside. It's actually something totally different. Okay, there's also something in the foot that mimics carpal tunnel. It's called tarsal tunnel syndrome. On the inside of the foot, on the inside of the ankle, there's actually a tunnel where the nerve runs down and branches off the sciatic nerve. So this syndrome could be happening in a lot of different places, but we're focusing on the carpal tunnel and why that happens, and the repetitive type injuries that's going on. Neck position is a huge one. Why is it, like Sandy said, the clerical? Why is that? Why does this really come into play with the clerical type stuff?
Because you don't sit, you've always.
Yeah, you're bent
typing.
forward, you know, and you're pulling on the nerves. And that's an important process, because if you looked at the, if you look at the nerve system, if you look at the nerve system chart, okay, in the nerve system chart, in the neck, when you're pulling on these areas here, you can actually be stretching the nerves that actually reach down into your hand. You'll see a picture of it a little later on how the nerve actually traces down there, okay? Repetitive stress. The muscle and ligaments get involved when you have repetitive stress. So, for example, the easiest muscle and ligament involvement that people won't understand is tendinitis, okay, because they get some discomfort or pain in an elbow or something of that nature. That's basically what's going on. There's some sort of change in the bone and the muscles of the ligaments that can actually affect it. But constantly repeating something puts more and more stress on those ligaments and muscles, and that's why people such as myself who run a lot and have had 3 knee surgeries have arthritic changes in their bones, okay, because those things you can't change. It's the repetitive pounding and beating on it. So those things can also happen in your hand, because when you hit a keyboard, the average keystroke is about 5 ounces of pressure. 5 ounces isn't a lot, okay? It's not a lot. But think about typing 60 words a minute, 100 words a minute, and doing it day after day. Or if you're a massage therapist or chiropractor, the constant pressure, you're putting more pressure, the constant pressure you're putting on it. But even a 5 ounce keystroke added up over how many number of keystrokes can add up to thousands of pounds of pressure a day. So it's important that you are really, really careful. I was talking to someone earlier, and they started doing just a walking type exercise at home, and part of it was also stepping sideways. And a lot of, who walks or steps sideways? Crabs? Right? You know, yeah, you do, right? You know, but the thing is, not a lot of people do, so what ends up happening is when you do that, you put a lot of pressure on here. Now, she has a knee problem on one side, so what ended up happening, she was having pain in her opposite hip, and I was explaining to her, even though the knee doesn't hurt a lot, when you step and you put weight and you go to the left side, the body is going to read that input, and it's going to say, oh, step harder and get off of it real quick. Even though she's not feeling actual pain, the body is still reading that noxious input into the body. So you may not feel pain, but repeating it again and again will bring that on. So who's affected? 8 million people per year. Okay? Women, 3 times more likely to have CTS. Can you say they have more clerical work? No, not really, not anymore. Okay, I mean, there's a huge balance, but there's still a prevalence to women having more. Pregnant women notoriously have carpal tunnel syndrome. Okay, why do pregnant women suffer with carpal tunnel a lot of the times? Swelling, that's right. Because you're swelling the hands, okay, or something is swelling, and it's putting pressure on the area, okay? And it causes, and that edema or swelling will cause the problems. So that's a huge factor. In here I have, I don't know if it's on here, office workers and laborers, and there's $1 billion a year in the US in direct costs, and there are some more costs indirectly. There's some stats that I just want to look in here and read to you. It is the highest number of days lost in work-related injuries reported by the National Center for Health Statistics. This is all from national or local stat areas on health. Accounts for 50% of all work-related injuries reported in the Bureau of Labor at the Statistics in NIOSH, which is another health organization of the government. We talked about the $1 billion. Well, the $1 billion in direct costs of plastic and reconstructive surgery. That's where it comes from. It's plastic and reconstructive surgery that's working on. There's 463,637 surgeries for CTS per year in the USA. That's a lot of surgery. Okay, and how many here have had people who have either have had CTS or carpal tunnel surgery syndrome, or know somebody, yeah. See, look, I mean, that's, so think about it. I mean, that's, I mean, that, it really, that many people have it. Nearly 50% of all carpal tunnel syndrome cases result in 31 days or more of work loss, and highest to lowest numbers of carpal tunnel syndrome events by job. Laborers, freight stock, and movers. Okay, so people that are in trucks. Customer service representatives, janitors, cleaners, retail sales workers, automotive mechanics, sewing machine operator. I never thought of a sewing machine operator, but I think about it now. My mom used to do that for a living. And
It's also the vibration.
yeah, the vibration, right. Truck drivers, office clerks. This is all reported to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S. Department of Labor in 2006. So it's huge. It's not a small thing. So what is the carpal tunnel? You see in here, you see how they draw a little tunnel in there? Well, if you hold your hand out like this, okay, and then if everybody could put their hands up like this, and then just flip it over, okay, you're turning that tunnel upside down. Right in here, there's a tunnel that's formed. You have 8 bones in your wrist, and you have what they call a flexor retinaculum, which is a ligament that goes right over here and connects 2 of the bones. That's what forms the tunnel. It is really, really precarious in what can happen, because you're supposed to, if you turn your hand over like this keeps it nice and straight. Who stays on their mouse or keyboard like this all day long? Most people do what? They collapse their wrist. And this position, this is why for massage therapists and chiropractors, it's really bad. Hey, Erica. So this is what happens when it gets pinched. All those median nerves and everything, they get pinched in there, and it causes a problem. This pressure on the median nerve can cause a reflex arc into the neck, or a reflex arc into the pain nerve centers of the body, and it causes a loop that goes around and around, but it will shut down the nerve. It will literally try to shut down the nerve so you don't feel the pain, until it gets so bad that it starts to affect the pain nerve fibers. And it can be here, but this is true carpal tunnel syndrome. It's here in the wrist, okay? How many people know somebody who's had carpal tunnel syndrome surgery, okay, and I don't know,
Didn't get better.
and yeah, right, yeah, okay,
She's permanently disabled. She had it done in both hands simultaneously.
right. And usually when it's in both hands, there's something that they didn't even address.
Well, she was a machine operator, and she was 45 when
They
did the surgery after she'd worn braces for a long time, and it's a lot worse now that
Yeah.
they've done the surgery.
You know, so that's the thing. So we, in the chiropractic world, I mean, I have a lot of dental assistants that come in, and we work on their hands all the time. I've actually worked on some of your wrists and fingers and things of that nature. So it's very important. So what ends up happening is the bone here subluxates. Does anybody recognize that word? Yeah, subluxation. There's a subluxation in the wrist. There's 8 bones in there. Okay, what was the mnemonic that you used in school to remember it? Do you remember?
No, I just learned them.
You just learned them? We had a mnemonic that we learned to remember the bones. It was some lovers try positions that they can't handle. Okay, the subluxation, but the second letter is the lunate bone. The lunate bone is the one that's right here, and the lunate bone is the one that subluxates and drops in on the nerve. Okay, this is actually considered the front. Okay, and what ends up happening is it subluxates forward, so it drops down, and it pushes on the nerve because you're doing this. Does that make sense? Because you're doing this because it's pushing the bone down. So it's important to understand those aspects of everything that's going on. There are some stats that we have to look at, because a majority of the hand gets innervated or has the nerve go into it from the median nerve. Okay, so does anybody know which fingers are usually affected by the median nerve?
Well, I can tell you.
No, that's the ulnar nerve.
These 3?
It's these.
The one you have on.
Okay, this one here is half of the median nerve. So people that have carpal tunnel syndrome, it's the first 3 fingers. and half of this sometimes, but usually this is a different nerve root. So it depends on what's going on. The outside here, okay, or actually it's supposed to be the inside if you really look at it at anatomical position. This is actually C8. This is the ulnar nerve. That's the other tunnel. Okay, so true median nerve entrapment, it affects this part of the hand. So they call this a six-shooter sometimes, because this is C6, which is the dermatome or the nerve root that comes to here, and C5, C6, C7, they make up part of the median nerve. So those are the things that you're looking at, and it's usually in this part. And what most people have problems with when they have problems with carpal tunnel, they have problems gripping. Okay, because that's where a lot of the grip comes from. Unless you go mountain, unless you do rock climbing, and rock climbing actually entails a lot of using the other half of the hand. So that's an important aspect to look at. This is what I was talking about earlier. Things can be going on in your body for years before you have any idea that there's something bad happening to your hand. Let me put this back up here, folks. I need to be able to see it. It's really far. I can see distance, but I can't see that good. So if we have pain in our body, what does that usually entail? What part of the process is pain usually show up in? It shows inflammation is a process that we get when we first injure something. It's part of what they call the healing cycle, and it may cause pain, okay, because of the swelling and all the redness and things of that nature. And it's actually there for a reason, because it's to tell you. But in most cases, if someone has something chronic going on in their body, do they feel pain right away, or does it happen later on? It happens later on, okay? That's the key that we want to understand, because you can, if you took your fingernail, okay, and you started rubbing on your finger, on your arm like this, try it, okay? It doesn't really hurt, right? Because it's annoying, right? But if you kept doing this for hours and hours on end, what would happen?
Actually bleed.
You would actually bleed, and you would start irritating it. It already starts turning red. You would irritate, but you're not really feeling pain. You just know it's annoying, you know there's something going on. That's what happens to the nerves. They consistently get irritated. Do it for years. It's going to bleed. It's going to start digging deep in. Guess what? You're going to hit some pain receptors when you do that. So that's the key to understanding with where this comes from, because when you look at a subluxation of the wrist or a subluxation of the spine, pain isn't there when you first start. Only 10% of the nervous system actually perceives pain. 10% of the nervous system is receiving pain because that's a survival cycle. That's when your body goes into survival mode, and then it goes into adrenaline rushes and boosting up everything that's going on to keep your body from falling apart. Okay, so this is huge. So this is huge to understand. So this stuff happens. I always ask this question when people first start with me. When do people feel pain when they have cancer? Do they feel? They don't. Okay, and some people personally know, but they don't. But if they're feeling pain, what usually happens?
They wait.
Yeah, they've waited too long. It's usually, yeah, you said it, they can pass. And as a matter of fact, we have someone who recently had a family member that we knew wasn't in a lot of pain, was sort of stubborn, didn't want to go to the doctor, and finally went for, I don't remember what it was for, maybe it was kidney or some sort of pain in his back, and all of a sudden they found cancer. Guess where? Stage 4 all over their body. Okay, they were going to start the person on chemo. The day he was going to start chemo, had a heart attack and never woke up. 2 weeks from diagnosis to death. Okay, you got to catch things earlier. I'm not saying that carpal tunnel syndrome is going to kill you. Okay, all right, please don't misunderstand. But you can prevent it if you do the right things and make sure that it's going in the right direction. Okay, so we were talking about things that are often overlooked. You were talking about this young lady that had the surgery on both sides. There was a study that showed that many times a majority of the people that have carpal tunnel, which is down here in the wrist, have neck problems. You know how we look for what we call the arc of life or that curvature in the neck? That's why. Because a lot of it, that's where the nerves originate. The roots of the nerves originate in the neck. Okay, and then the nerve runs down in through the shoulder, runs down the arm, runs down through the forearm and down into the hand. So let me ask you a question. If someone is focusing on this and they're having pain down here, is it possible that these things here could be causing the problem? Wouldn't it make sense to check that? But if you're going, but do they?
The strange thing is, if you go to the dentist and you have a really bad toothache over here and they find the cavity down there, they'll say, oh, well, the pain radiates.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? That's common practice with teeth, but it's not with your body.
right. And that's, and you think about it, where are referred pain, think about referred pain patterns. What is one of the referred pain patterns for a heart disease?
The neck, down the arm.
It could be the neck and down the arm, it could also be both arms. It could also be shortness of breath. Okay, there's a lot of symptoms that can be involved with it, but it can be almost, it could be if you wake up one morning and you have the worst headache that you've ever had in your life, and you've never experienced something like that again, get yourself to the hospital. Because you know what, it could be something going on with your heart. It could be some sort of preeminent stroke thing. You have to be careful of doing that. Obviously, you know, for me, for somebody who's had migraines, having a really bad headache is up there. I've had 2 spinal taps because of my migraines. I used to be on many medications. You know, I don't even want to go there. But the lack of neck curve can possibly be. That's why chiropractic is important. That's why we focus on the curve, because it allows the nerves to be a little more pliable and moving on. So I'm just going to read another stat here that they did with the studies. Case study analysis shows that often the people with carpal tunnel syndrome also have neck-related problems. Like I stated, a study of 1,000 cases of carpal tunnel syndrome found a significant correlation between carpal tunnel syndrome and the arthritis of the neck. Okay, now, and we've also established that arthritis is not normal. It's common, but not normal. Okay, so that's an important aspect to understand too. This is why we also do workshops on headaches and neck problems such as arthritis. Okay, we do those and you'll see them as we go along. Research shows that 67 to 75% of patients who have carpal tunnel syndrome have spinal nerve root irritation. That's where the nerve originates. 67 to 75%. That's a pretty high number, so you think it's important to get a check before you have surgery? And see if your hands can get, so that's an important. Nerve compression in the neck can block the flow of nutrients to the nerves in the wrist, making it more susceptible to injuries. So if this is blocked, you can become more susceptible to injury in your hand and it won't heal as fast. Okay? That's what that's saying. As a result, spinal specialists or chiropractors are very experienced in this, and that's us. Okay, so you know, you look at these things and you say to yourself, could I have prevented some of this stuff? Well, let's look at this. We just talked about all of these, and it's showing you all the areas: neck bones misaligned, shoulder pinched nerves, elbow tendon swollen, last the wrist. Just blows my mind. The most common and costly occupational health problems affecting hundreds of thousands of Americans each year, costing more than $20 billion annually in workers' comp costs. Another $100 billion lost on productivity, employee turnover, and indirect costs. This is reported to OSHA. That's a lot of money. I know someone in here is an accountant, and they're looking at that and saying, that's a lot of money. But the thing is, interestingly enough, how much money could we save our system by preventing all of this? And looking at it before we actually go in and do the surgeries? A lot.
Yeah, that doesn't even calculate the people who go on permanent disability.
Right, yeah, that's right. So it's your quality of life. Who feels any of that? Oh, go back. Who, has anybody, has this ever happened to anybody? Okay, that's the classic sign of carpal tunnel. If they say, if you wake up at night with wrist pain, they say, oh, you have carpal tunnel. They don't even look to the other areas. Well, do you have a pillow that's supporting your neck? Are you sleeping properly? Are you sleeping with your hand in this awkward position? Yes? No, it's not on her head. Clicking in the wrist. I've had clicking in my wrist for a long time. I used to do a lot of powerlifting and weightlifting. That was really bad for my wrists. And powerlifters notoriously have like stress fractures in their wrists and hands because they're lifting so much weight. But I have my wrists for years. I've always had problems. And periodically, as a chiropractor, we're putting our hands like this. It causes painful wrists, numbness into the hands, loss of strength. This affects your quality of life. Why? You can't pick things up. It wakes you up at night. You're in pain. Okay, and we want to help that. These are the people that are at major risk. We sort of looked at, or I mentioned the people earlier in this talk, and really, honestly, anybody that's doing any sort of gripping or anything that's repetitive with their hands is gonna, people think about the people that are gripping like hammers and things of that nature. Yeah, musicians, notorious for having carpal tunnel. Why? They're doing like I play guitar, you're doing this all the time, or you're squeezing on something, notoriously piano, you're constantly banging on the keys. So there's many things that can be happening. Prevention. This is the way you want your hands when you do. Don't bear weight with a bent wrist. What do I do all day? Dr. Jenna, what do you do all day? Okay, Dr. Jenna, when Dr. Jenna first started working with me, she had a broken scaphoid. She had a broken bone that was surgically repaired, and it limited her range when she first started. Now it's much better, but it still puts a lot of pressure on in there. Okay, so this you can see. This mimics at the keyboard when you're doing this. This is what it's supposed to look like, and on the keyboard you're doing this. It's just not as extreme of an angle, so it takes longer for it to affect it. So you have to be really careful. So when you're lifting something, make sure the wrists are straight or strong. Try not to push down on things. You can't always do it, but you do the best you can to limit the amount of damage that you can do. This just shows you what we talked about earlier. 6 months of patients after their carpal tunnel surgery, over 50% of the patients had a recurrence of CTS symptoms. National Institute of Health. Over 57% of failure in the carpal tunnel surgery from day 1 to 6 years post-surgery. Journal of Hand Surgery. Nearly 50% of all patients with carpal tunnel symptoms change jobs with 30 months of initial diagnosis. Only 23% of carpal tunnel syndrome patients return to their professions after surgery. There's the real cost. If you love to do something, you need to make sure that you're exercising your hands. So during the day, you don't want to put pressure on it, but throughout the day, if you put your hands up, and it's interesting, if you all put your hands up just like this, just in front of you like this, this is the position you should be at your keyboard, sort of with a 90-degree angle. Okay, we have an ergonomics class on that. But the thing is, the easiest thing to do is just put your hand through range of motions, just to keep them flexible. Okay, because if you don't do this, it loses its range of motion, just like our bodies. And you have to do it for your hands. So simple exercise. If you're typing for long periods of time, make sure you stretch the hands. You got to warm them up. You got to make sure they're working properly. If you're gripping something for a long period of time, when you get home at night, you have to reverse what you're doing all day long. Take a rubber band, put it around the outside of your hand, and depending on your strength, you may be able to use something thicker. You stretch the hand open with the rubber band on the outside. Okay, that works the muscles on the other side of the forearm, and what happens is rather than doing this, you're doing this, and you're using these muscles, and then it balances the two, and it doesn't impinge upon the nerve. So you have to do these simple things. They're simple things, but you have to get used to do them. if you work with your hands every day, you gotta do it. It drives my wife nuts. So I'm in a mall, I'm walking around and I'm doing this with my hands all day. And she's looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I gotta keep my hands limber. I mean, every morning I'm warming up when I'm in the shower, when I'm doing my spinal exercises. I actually sit there warming up my wrists and hands because when I come in, I wanna make sure that I can adjust. Okay, but the thing is you have to warm up because it's physical work. It's physical work. Anything that you're doing is physical work. I remember with Kirsten when she used to work and she was using a key to constantly open a locked door, or it was like a locked cabin or something. She would come in, she goes, my hand and wrist is killing me. And it's not like, it takes a lot of strength to unlock a door or unlock a cabinet. But doing it again and again and again and again, it affects the wrist. So you have to make sure. So simple things, just range of motion. And if it really gets bad at the end of the night, if you're doing something very, very physical, throw some ice on it. Just to get the reduction out. If you're still having pain in your wrists and you've done these things, that means it could be coming from somewhere else. And usually if it's bilateral, if it's in both arms, that usually means it's coming from the neck. Because it doesn't just come to both hands at the same time. Okay? If it's one hand over the other one, yeah, then maybe there's something here. But if you have it in both hands, it's usually coming from up here. Okay?
That's the thing for me, with you, because they diagnosed me with that a long time ago, but I didn't do any treatment for it because I wasn't getting shots and stuff like that.
Right.
It's inflammation in my wrist. You took care of it. You said, yeah, it's inflammation. You took care of it. I put ice on it instead of 6 months in a...
And a splint.
It was, a day
Yeah.
after the ice, and it didn't grow, and it was inflammation.
Yeah. And inflammation is a big part of every process that causes pain. Inflammation is there, and that's something that we'll talk about at a later date with another workshop. Within 6 months of patients of carpal tunnel surgery, we went through this, I'm sorry. So splinting is an option. Not a big fan of it. I like movement. Movement is more important to me than splinting because it sends neurological input. Icing joints, like we just talked about. Adjustments, which you just talked about, thank you very much. Because we do the adjustments. Wrist exercises we just talked about. And improving your mechanics and maintaining a healthy neck. The neck is really important in this process. It really, because that's where the nerve root starts. And by the study we looked at, about 2/3 of the problems, 2/3 of the people that have problems with their wrists have problems in their neck too. So that's an important aspect to understand. This is an option, and I put it up there. Not a good option, but sometimes it has to happen. It's very rare and far between, but sometimes it has to happen. And you know what they do with the surgery is they actually cut the retinaculum, they cut the tendon here to open up the space. Okay, what did that solve? Just because, that's what they do, they cut it. That's the surgery. Ignore it. Or you can do medications, but then there's a whole other slew of information about medications that you want to be careful of. I put a triangle. I put this up here. I always talk about the hierarchy of needs in our body. Okay, the first hierarchy is nourishment. You need food. Interestingly enough, right before the class, about half an hour before the class, I was really hungry, and Dr. Jenna, about an hour ago or so, maybe an hour and a half ago, she's like, I need to eat something, and she's eating a chowing on an apple, and we're here pretty much a whole day, so you get hungry, so I ran into the back, threw some organic peanut butter on some really good organic grain bread, and I had that. Talk about energy, okay, I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go now, okay, but you need to make sure you have nourishment, but if you don't eat, and you can't eat, how long would it be before you pass away?
Week, 2 weeks,
3, 4 weeks, maybe
Yeah.
2. It depends on the individual. Someone like me, I have a lot of fat to eat, so it probably lasts a little longer. So there's a lot to chew on here. So that's something that's important. Water. How long can you last without water?
3 days.
3, 4 days. 3, 4 days. Interestingly enough, if you don't drink a lot of water and you get dehydrated, your bones you start to get inflammation and things start to get irritated. Your body, if it needs water, will try to draw fluid from the food you eat. But if you're eating crappy food, you're not gonna get the nourishment you need. So that's something that we talk about. When you look at the new series of workshops that we're doing, we actually have them broken down into, starting July, we'll have a new series of workshops, and we actually have them into building foundational classes, nutrition, one is on family wellness, and the other one is advanced workshops. And this is one of the advanced workshops. So the thing is, you're ahead of the game, but just understand that that's a big thing that you have to understand, because we talk about water, we talk about nutrition. We actually have a workshop that's called H2O and the importance of water. So it's important that you need it, because 2-3 days without it, you die. Okay? Oxygen, that's an obvious one. There are people that can hold their breath for a real long time, but they can't hold it forever. Okay, 2-3 minutes without oxygen, if you're oxygen deprived, the muscles start to decay, you start having all kinds of problems, and then you're considered brain dead. And that's the last and most important part that we got to look at. If you don't have nerve flow, the body dies. Look at anybody who has had an injury to a nerve, okay, and look at the muscle that or organ that's attached to that nerve. What happens to it? It does. It starts to atrophy. Yeah, it starts to get smaller and atrophy. So you need that nerve flow into your body. As a matter of fact, you're considered clinically dead only when you're brain dead. Okay, they can keep the rest of your body alive, but you're clinically dead. Okay, so it's important that what we do here is we try to keep the nerve flow running so the life force in your body is working properly. But simple exercises, especially if you're on the machine a lot, especially if you're at a desk a lot, simple exercises. Grab a rubber band, keep it there. Even a squeezy ball is good, but you're doing this all day. You want to do the opposite. So you can grab a rubber band, put it around the outside of your hand, and just stretch your hands out. And do it as far as you can before the rubber band actually pops off. But you want to make sure, whack! But simple exercises, and let people know. This is what, simple things that you can do. They're not, is this complicated? No, it's simple. I'm a simple individual. I go by the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. Okay, because for me, it's easier to understand. There's complexities involved in it, but you can prevent things by just keeping it simple. Making sure the curve in your neck is proper, make sure the nerve flow is proper, make sure you check everything before you go. And it might take time, because if you've had things for years, it's going to take time. Okay? Let people know. If you feel it in your heart, I'm sure you know people that have these types of symptoms. Have them come and get checked. It's not going to cost them anything to get checked. We look at their posture, we palpate, see if there is subluxation maybe evident, and then we can recommend an exam if possible. If they don't want no harm, no foul, at least they know that they got checked. Okay? If they want to learn more information, have them come to a workshop. It's really important. I ran over a little bit. I really, really, truly apologize, because I don't like to, because I value your time. But ask them to come, and go from there. And then, most importantly, just go out and let people know. Okay. Thank you very, very much. Are there any questions that someone wants to ask me specifically? No. You can leave even if someone asks a question. People always don't want to leave when there's a question. It's like, did I miss something? Could they
Well,
have
I have a
missed
good
it?
answer to it.